But when you've had either a pregnancy loss or a stillbirth, there's no one coming in and checking on you. There's also the expectation of you to go back into your normal life without letting your body heal. And if you had a healthy baby at home, you'd usually probably spend time at home with the baby in postpartum, you know, letting your body heal, looking after the baby, adapting to that new way of life. But without the baby, a lot of the time, women are expected to just go back to their normal life, and their body is still navigating that postpartum period, the hormones, the emotions, but then they've also got the grief and all of that on top of it. So it's a very difficult time to navigate for the mum, but then also for any, health provider that is supporting them, they have to understand the depth of the grief and the emotions and everything that's going along with that experience, plus all of the internal shifts that will be happening as a result. Because no matter what, no matter how early or how late the pregnancy was, she's going to be postpartum. She has given birth. Even at 7 weeks, I did. So it's going to be acknowledging that for her, acknowledging potentially that the grief may not, there's no timeline for grief. So just allowing them to go through the motions and not putting any expectations on them, especially to return to work, like being able to give them the space to be postpartum, to have their body go through the motions, to heal.
So, why did I start this podcast? After experiencing miscarriages and going through a challenging period of numbness and anger, I found healing by understanding my emotions, reconnecting with my body, and connecting with my soul, and also my spirit babies. My mission with this podcast is to enter a space of vulnerability and sacredness, of deeply personal stories of women who were impacted by pregnancy loss, miscarriages, stillbirth, and infertility. My goal is to bridge the gap between our losses and the deep spiritual insights that can come with them so that they can guide us toward healing and understanding beyond the physical realm. I'm Daisy May Reyes, and I bring together the wisdom of our wombs as a collective. Welcome to the Women Collective podcast, presented by the Oversoul Vibration. Our guest today is a pioneer in the field of pregnancy loss support. She is the founder of the Institute of Healing Through Pregnancy Loss and the creator of the Pregnancy Loss Practitioner certification. Her name is Sharna Southan. And today she has empowered so many women, bereaved mothers especially, to heal and find peace in their postpartum journey. So I'm honored to have her in the show today. Welcome, Sharna.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so inspired by your work as the pregnancy loss, founder and facilitator for all the support groups here worldwide, not just in your local area. And your work centers around healing mothers who are or have gone through the experiences of loss. Could you share a little bit about what inspired you to do the work that you do now?
Yeah, so essentially it came out of my own experience. I had a missed miscarriage in 2017. And, growing up, I just thought you had sex and you fall pregnant. Like there was nothing else that happened in that process. That just is what happened, and that's what people talk about. So I never thought that it would be a part of my story. I never thought that it even existed. I felt like I was living under a rock to never have heard about miscarriage or never had anyone around me experience it. So when I was navigating it, I felt like I was the only woman going through that experience. I felt like it meant that I would never have kids. I thought that it was the be all and end all of my motherhood journey. I found out it ended up being a very traumatic experience for me. So I found out that I, well, when I was rushed to hospital, the statistic I was told for pregnancy loss was 1 in 4 pregnancies end in loss. And in that moment, I was like, well, if I feel like I'm the only one going through this, there's other women out there that are feeling the same way, but there is so many more women that are feeling the same way than what I had originally thought. And being that my experience was very traumatic, the depth of support that was available just for miscarriage was not there. But to be told that you have gone through trauma, the recognition for trauma and pregnancy loss and baby loss just is completely missing. So I was like, well, I need to create something where women can feel seen and heard and given ways to move through their healing. Because if you go back to a doctor, they'll just be like, you know, wait for a couple of periods and you can start to try again. And I was like, in my mind, I was like, I've gone through trauma. How could I even comprehend trying to conceive again, even though I desperately wanted to be a mum? So the information that I was getting from the medical system just didn't add up. Like I wanted to fall pregnant again, but I knew I needed to heal my body first and my mind. And, you know, it's a holistic experience. You have to do mind, body, spirit. Like it can't be that you just go and see a therapist and then you're, or like all of a sudden cured and you can, you know, fall pregnant. So as I navigated my healing, I kind of, you know, not so much tangibly documented what I was going through, but mentally and emotionally, what I was going through then shaped how I was able to support women afterwards. It became like the backbone, it became like the structure of the transitions of healing that I went through. And then that's how I started supporting lost mums through their experience as well. But then I was approached by lost mums to understand how to become the support for other people. They wanted to be the support system. They wanted to know how to hold space for others, which is then essentially where the practitioner certification came to life, because not only did I go through my own healing, my own loss, and I was supporting lost mums, but then they were wanting to know then how they could take their journey to the next level and their experience and help women that had gone through essentially what they had gone through and what they saw was missing as well. So yeah, that's really, really short way, short explanation of how I got to where I am and doing what I do.
Thank you so much, Sharna. In your space where you help certify these lost moms to become the support for other moms, what did you discover that, like, in their process of healing? Like, what did you discover in the support moms that are supporting women? Like, their growth, their evolution, like how are they healing at the same time?
So they essentially got to a point in their healing that I got to. It was kind of like an awakening, or almost to, you know, they had gone through this, you know, massive life altering experience, but it almost woke them up to something that was bigger than them. And that's what I felt too. But when they got to that sort of point, they're like, well, I don't know how to continue. So they had done, again, there wasn't much available to them in terms of healing for them. They navigated it essentially on their own, picking up things along the way that they maybe had heard of. And then so they tried that. They were trying different things. But essentially, when they've come into the practitioner certification, the way I intentionally designed it so that it heals the healer, so that while they're healing others. So their huge shifts and transformations really and realizations have come from inside the practitioner certification in terms of why they were feeling the way that they were feeling, what was missing. They were kind of connecting the dots then at that point from their experience, from their journey. And especially the trauma piece, because there were so many women that have come to me with no recognition from the medical system in terms of their physical pain that they were going through. And when we were able to explore the trauma element of it, they started to realize and have these big aha moments of, that's why my body is doing what it's doing. That's why I have the pain. This is why I have, potentially the PTSD even. So the realizations, and like I said, they kind of were making connections for their own healing and in their own journey inside of the certification. But prior to that, it was just, and I did the same thing. It was just whatever I could find. I would hear about something and be like, okay, cool, I'll try that. And then you hear about something else and you're like, okay, cool, I'll try that. Whether it works or whether it doesn't, you don't know, you just try it. But what I was able to do inside the programs is kind of, condense it all in and bring them a structure, bring them tools and awarenesses that I know worked. It worked for me and it worked for the lost mums that I supported. So it kind of strips away all of the questioning of like, will this work or won't this work? And it gives them something that, or it gives them a few tools that I know have worked. And then they can move forward with that and try that in their own life first and see how it works. And then when they see the transformations, when they see the shifts or they feel that change inside of them, then from that embodied place, they can go on and share that with someone else and then go, well, this is how it worked for me. And I know, well, I hope that it can work this way for you too.
Yeah, that's so beautiful that you are sharing tools that you have experienced yourself and have kind of like tested and experimented, and you're just kind of like passing down the wisdom and knowledge that you've gained from those tools that you have tried. Can you walk us through briefly what healing looks like for a bereaved mother during a postpartum period? How does that differ for mothers who have experienced pregnancy loss?
Mm. It's a very difficult, so postpartum for a lost mum is not only depending on, obviously the time that she lost the baby. So if the mum has gone full term, she will have all of the hormonal shifts and changes and essentially the body preparing for, you know, and sometimes they do go through birth. So they go through all of the natural transitions that a mum would go through. But at the end, they're not bringing their baby home. So it could, not only are they navigating the hormonal shifts, they're navigating the grief. They could also, I think from the second trimester, you can start creating, your body starts creating milk. So their body will start providing for the baby that isn't there. So again, it's like that. And I've heard from mums, it's almost like a slap in the face from the universe to say, you've gone through this heart-wrenching experience, but your body is still trying to provide for a baby that isn't there. And in postpartum, it's one of the biggest hormonal shifts that you will ever experience. So for me, I lost my baby at 7 weeks, but I still experienced the baby blues. I still experienced hormonal shifts on top of the grief, the numbness, the emotions, everything else that you've got going on. So it's a very difficult time because not only are they navigating essentially normal postpartum, like what a normal mum would be going through, but they're also navigating the grief and the heartache on top of that. When a mum is going through postpartum and they have a healthy baby at home, they've got people coming and checking on them, looking after the mum, looking after the baby. But when you've had either a pregnancy loss or a stillbirth, there's no one coming in and checking on you. There's also the expectation of you to go back into your normal life without letting your body heal. And if you had a healthy baby at home, you'd usually probably spend time at home with the baby in postpartum, you know, letting your body heal, looking after the baby, adapting to that new way of life. But without the baby, a lot of the time, women are expected to just go back to their normal life, and their body is still navigating that postpartum period, the hormones, the emotions, but then they've also got the grief and all of that on top of it. So it's a very difficult time to navigate for the mum, but then also for any, health provider that is supporting them, they have to understand the depth of the grief and the emotions and everything that's going along with that experience, plus all of the internal shifts that will be happening as a result. Because no matter what, no matter how early or how late the pregnancy was, she's going to be postpartum. She has given birth. Even at 7 weeks, I did. So it's going to be acknowledging that for her, acknowledging potentially that the grief may not, there's no timeline for grief. So just allowing them to go through the motions and not putting any expectations on them, especially to return to work, like being able to give them the space to be postpartum, to have their body go through the motions, to heal and have someone, showing up for them, because that is entirely missing, especially with early losses, because, sometimes there's even more of a misconception that, if it's an early loss, your body hasn't really, like, was it even a pregnancy? So they expect so much more of you to be just a normal functioning human being. And it just can't be. You can't be. You physically can't be. I required so much time off work after my loss. So, yeah, it's just not, we have to understand. And I think there's just so much that's not acknowledged in terms of that postpartum period. We need to be able to help women navigate that time, to navigate those internal shifts and changes and hormonal, everything that's going on, as well as helping them grieve, as well as acknowledging that, their baby isn't here.
Yeah, and I am one of those that had the early miscarriages, the early loss. But my grieving was a little different. It's more like I numb myself down, like
Mm.
because I didn't want to feel. And there are different types of grieving. So, speaking about that subject, what do you find in your community the impact of grief? from the moment that the lost mom returns home?
There's a lot of societal expectations that you can't grieve. I've heard women say, it was only early. Why should I even be sad? And for me, I knew that I was grieving. So I allowed myself to go through the process. But I see a lot of women pushing it aside, a lot of women not allowing themselves to feel and wanting to just move on with life essentially quite quickly so that it does either distract them from their grief or it numbs the pain. And that's very common, unfortunately. But our body isn't designed that way. Our body is designed to be human, is to have human emotions and feelings and be able to witness them. So the good and the bad, our body doesn't recognize that our emotions are good or bad. They're just an emotion, and you just need to witness that emotion. And grief is just, and I'm sure you've probably heard this before, grief is love with nowhere to go. So you've just got to allow that to come through, because if we never love anything, we would never grieve. But because there is love, there is grief, there is heartache. And if we don't allow ourselves the permission to go through that process, we're sort of shutting off parts of us as a human to be able to feel and experience. As much as it hurts, it is part of our healing process. We have to be able to see that pain. We have to be able to witness the emotions so that we can help our body process them, so that we can help process our experience, and so that we can ultimately step into that healing space. But, we're not taught how to feel emotions. We're not taught how to grieve. And often people don't even like to talk about it. So we kind of just like silence it, shut it all away. And like I said, that's very common. And especially for lost moms, it is even more so because there's so much stigma around the losses that, they feel like they can't talk about it. So then their grief is then, pushed back inside as well because they can't talk about their experience either.
Do you feel that lacking self forgiveness be like one of the reasons why we lost moms push those emotions aside or not allow ourselves to grieve?
Mm. Yeah, that was a huge one for me, to be able to love yourself again after all of everything that you've been through and be able to forgive your body for not doing the thing that you feel like it should. So yeah, it's huge. That's a huge factor. And ideally, for true healing, we have to allow ourselves that self-forgiveness, the self-love, and get back to that place. But the only way that we can get back to that place is to feel all of the array of emotions that come before love. We can't bypass emotions, because if we try to, jump over them, those other emotions that we're trying to jump over will keep pulling you back in. So this is like, to be able to sustain that self, forgiveness and self-love, we have to be able to feel those more uncomfortable emotions first so that we can get up there and so that we can sustain that. But it's huge because, your body, you feel like your body failed you. So, you know, it's a very difficult thought process and everything to move past.
Right. How do you guide mothers in releasing feelings of guilt and self blame so they'll be able to practice self love and forgiveness?
Yeah, it's definitely not an easy place to be exploring those feelings, but really it's about bringing truth to it, because essentially, a lot of the guilt and the blame, where that comes from, It's the thought processes, the beliefs that are behind them aren't true. So a lot of it is just to help bring that awareness to the beliefs that are, coming up, to the emotions that are coming up, what the beliefs are, like, what are they telling you? Are they true? Because more often than not, they're not true. So what is the truth? And a lot of the time, there's nothing you didn't do anything on purpose, and more often than not, there's nothing that you could have changed to make the outcome any different. So it's helping them bring the truth and creating a new belief system around that, and also the emotions that come up too. Just understanding, what triggered that emotion, what's underneath that, because again, the emotion that is at the surface layer, there's often more emotions that are kind of underneath that as well. And then there's feelings and belief systems underneath that too. So it's kind of just dismantling one bit at a time and unraveling that one bit, because a lot of the time when we look at the whole, it's very confronting and overwhelming, and everything's bad, and your self-talk is bad, the belief system is bad, and you can't love yourself from that place. But if we can just focus in on one thing and start dismantling and unraveling that, then it just gives you that little bit of momentum to keep going. And often once you can start doing that, it almost gives your brain and your body permission to keep going. But it's just starting, and it's finding that place to start. It's finding the person on the outside of you that can give you the safe space and the non-judgmental space to start exploring that, because sometimes what comes up might feel ugly. It might not feel like you, but it needs to come up and it needs to come out. So yeah, it's just starting in one small space. Like, you can't look at the big thing. It just has to be, okay, what is that in this moment? What is that thought process? What is that emotion? Where is it coming from? And bringing, if it could talk to you, what would it say? And bringing truth to it, and maybe reframing a belief about yourself as well in that moment.
Yeah. And yeah, having that space to really find out the the feelings that's coming up, from those experiences. However, sometimes it feels lonely, when we are in that experience, and it doesn't help that as soon as we leave the hospital, there's no support that follows, right? And that's why you created this space. How do you envision your institute to be like a complementary postpartum care for the lost moms?
Yeah, well, I hope to eventually get it into the medical system at some stage, start, being able to train healthcare providers. But right now, it is getting it in front of, birth workers, midwives, people who are in maybe positions of helping other women navigating even possible pregnancies after loss, or they may have helped them through part of the pregnancy which ended in loss. So then how does that birth worker continue to help them through? And, essentially what I had created initially was an extension to what I found was missing in the therapy settings. So in therapy, you would go to, your session, and you could talk about it, but often you left feeling like you were again on your own, something was missing. Often everything would come crashing down in between sessions. So essentially, what then I created was what I needed. And I needed to feel empowered in between the sessions. I needed to have tools that I could pull on. I needed to know how to heal myself without having to go back to therapy for years on end. So that's what I created. And essentially, then it gives them the way to, heal for themselves, but it also gives them the next steps. Often after you see a therapist, it's kind of like that cut and dry. You're like, okay, now what? But then with the practitioner course, it gives them the next steps. It gives them the ways that they can take, you know, how do I move forward? How do I reconnect with my new life now after loss? Who am I? Allowing them to explore that for themselves. And then again, giving them the tools. And what one of my lost moms said to me, which she was one of the very first ones that came through the program, and she said to me that what she learned inside of the program has given her life skills. She goes, I never had the skills for my life like you've given me. And initially it was surrounding her loss, but then she's been able to apply those skills to other challenges and other areas of her life. So she goes, it's just given me so much more than I anticipated. And that's what I want. I want to be able to empower women to know that they can do that for themselves. They don't have to rely on other people. They don't have to rely on therapists and counselors for years on end. Yes, they're great when you need them. You can create like a team if you need it. If obviously your healing has like a block and you feel like you can't move through it, yes, there's definitely room for the medical system, for therapists and all of that. You just create a team. It doesn't have to be this one avenue that's going to fix you. You you reach out and have professionals, multiple different people helping you along that journey. But essentially, I want to be able to have that awareness, have that knowledge inside the medical system too.
Yes. So you would say that you want the healthcare providers and support systems to be more empathetic and understanding toward mothers. And just like you mentioned, that's like how you would place it. Is that right?
Mm.
Yeah.
There has to, there has to be more. Like I almost felt like my therapist was great, don't get me wrong, but it was like it was a textbook, this is grief, this is how you move through it. I'm like, no, this is different. So, I need you to understand what's happening inside of my brain. And essentially, that's what the practitioner program's all about is because it's been created by a lost mom, what's actually happening inside of the body and the brain and the thought processes and the emotions that come up and what the grief is like. So it's, definitely a different experience. And I do want the health professionals to know that, but also, having more lost mums step into that space. Like, of course, they're going to understand someone in a completely different way that comes to them for support.
Yeah. And I think that's so beautiful, like how we can add that in there without just the textbook knowledge, like you said. We're not
Mm,
uh, like part of the hypothesis testing or creating theories around grief. So I think you're right, adding the empathy factor in the session is very important. Um, Talking about that postpartum care for lost moms, like what are some common misconceptions around that you'd like to dispel, knowing what you know now?
I think it's just that lost mums experience postpartum, full stop. Like, just because there was, I actually read a quote, a lost mum posted on social media, and she said, just because I experienced a miscarriage doesn't mean I missed postpartum. And that in a in a nutshell is, essentially probably more so in early loss because again, there's just this whole misconception of like, oh, well, it was only early. So technically, was it even a birth? Was it even like, did your body even go through the motions? And like I said, I experienced the baby blues with no baby. So your body is still going through all of this, and you're not given any space or time to process it, to allow your body to go through natural postpartum. So just to even acknowledge that just because the woman doesn't have a baby at home does not mean that she is not going through postpartum. Her body was pregnant. Her body, she gave birth, no matter how that looked. It looks different at any stage of, and I think that's where also like when women go back to the doctors, they're like, oh, when can I try again? And then the doctor will say, all right, one cycle or two cycles and you can try again. I'm like, it takes a lot longer for your body to return back to normal with all of the hormonal shifts and everything, to just say, oh, just one cycle or two cycles and you can go. Like, we have to understand, and maybe give more time to what's actually happening internally. And I'd love for the medical system to go, okay, what's happening? What are you feeling? What natural shifts have you noticed in your body? Because not everyone's going to go through full-blown postpartum if they've experienced early loss. Like, they're not going to have all of that, changes. But just to acknowledge those changes, just to acknowledge that her body is going through that postnatal period, and understanding that it's not cut and dry. It's not that you had a loss, it's done. When can I try again? There's so much more that goes into that. And I want there just to be that recognition of our bodies do go through that partum period after loss. Not only are we navigating the grief, it's mixed in with all of that. And we need time. We need time. And sometimes with stillborn, you still get maternity leave. So that can allow you that time. But with early losses, not necessarily. You might get a few days. I mean, that's not enough to be able to process everything that's happening. So just that acknowledgement. Like, just because there's no baby at home doesn't mean that you're not postpartum.
Yeah, I totally agree because as you were explaining that, I'm remembering, like how I processed my early loss. And the way that I remembered it was I just, you know, push it away and I
Mm.
went back to work. And me going back to work was a distraction. And one day, as I was driving to work, and I decided I'm gonna go to Starbucks and get some coffee. And I was actually excited, because I was like, well, when I was pregnant, I didn't have coffee because I couldn't. And the moment that I held that Starbucks, I was driving on the highway, I was sipping it. That's when I just started crying out of nowhere. And I didn't realize that I didn't understand that burst of emotion because I was driving on the way to work early in the morning with a coffee, and then I was like, I can't go to work crying. And then I realized, oh my God, I think I'm grieving. And and I feel like the body remembers, and
Yeah.
it's an automatic response, we just remember. So if we have to try again and the doctor says, oh, just try it for the next one cycle or second
Mm.
cycle, but the moment that you are in that, concept, like the you and your husband or partner, and it just, the body remembers the trauma, and then you
Mhm.
just shut down. And not only that, you shut down mentally, physically, just emotionally, just everything. And then like you said, the hormone starts to work itself up again. And that's how I felt at the same time when I was in the middle of the grieving. So I can totally relate to what you just said. And I would love to know, we have listeners here who have the same experience as I have, and we have listeners who have experienced grief differently than I have. What would you advise them, about what we're talking about?
Just allow yourself to feel. Don't listen to what other people tell you, or even maybe the way that you've been conditioned. Like, oh no, I can't feel that emotion. I can't cry. I've got to be strong. Your body needs you to process, and the only way that it can is to be released. And like you said, it has memory. Grief has a memory. It's like a muscle memory. And you could potentially, in a year from that date, start bursting out crying again and having full grief through your body, and you're feeling tired and exhausted and brain fog and you don't know what's happening, your body remembers. So we need to be able to process that and be able to give ourselves permission to feel that. And I think that, I mean, that's a big thing, because a lot of the time no one wants to see you cry because they just like, oh no, I don't know what to do. But feel it, express it. If you want to cry, cry. If you're angry and frustrated, then find a pillow or something, scream into it, punch your bed. Your body knows what it needs in that moment to be seen and expressed. So even just ask yourself, what do I need right now? What can I do to support myself right now? And if it is cry, cry. Do that. If you're at work, maybe go and take some time out, go into the bathroom and just, give yourself some space away from other people. But I think a common thread through all, lost mums is that they feel like they can't show emotion, or, they have to be strong, they have to be a mom, they have to be a wife, they have to be the employee that they were before all of this happened, and they can't be a different person. But you're going to be different, and allow yourself to be different because you've gone through something huge. So give yourself permission to feel the emotions, give yourself permission to be a different person. It's okay. It's okay to feel like you're falling apart, because that's what healing is. It's messy, but it's necessary.
Yes, thank you so much, Sharna, for that beautiful message. And it really resonates. Our listeners who are interested about your work, where can they find you and how can they get into the Institute of Healing through Pregnancy Loss, and also, complete the practitioner certification for those that want to support other lost moms?
So there's obviously, what I do is twofold. So there is programs obviously still available for women who are navigating the immediate grief of loss. But there's also then the practitioner certification. So with the certification, it is through application only. So on my Instagram is probably where you'll find me most active. So definitely head over there. It's at Institute of Healing _PL. Connect with me, send me a DM, tell me what type of support you're after, you know, that initial support after loss in navigating the emotions and returning to self-love and self-acceptance and self-forgiveness, then we can do that. If it is a practitioner certification, if you want to take your journey to the next level and become the support maybe that you needed or that you see is missing, then ask me about the application process and I can send you the link to that. And then, we just book a call together and discuss the next steps. So yeah, essentially that's pretty much it. My social media is like an extension of me, extension of everything that I share, that I know. And yeah, I share everything.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Sharna. And what's next for you right now in your mission to support bereaved mothers?
I'm actually expanding the certification. So it's a really good time to be looking at coming into the practitioner certification. So I have one level currently, but I'm looking to add 2 more tiers to that certification to create an advanced and a master level certification. So that's exciting. That's something that I've been working on. And also, I've created just a quick masterclass for lost mums who are trying to conceive again. So it's stepping into that place with hope and confidence, because pregnancy after loss is scary, but also maybe you have experienced infertility or multiple losses. So this is going to allow you that safe space to share your experience, but also get the tools to help your system, your body, your emotions, and start processing your losses so that hopefully you can go into your, trying to conceive process with confidence and have that healthy outcome of a healthy baby that you want. So yeah, kind of working on 2 things at the moment, but both are very exciting. So definitely reach out if either one of those is aligning and talking to you.
Beautiful. And I'll make sure that I put the links in the show notes so everyone can find you there.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. You are doing such beautiful work for the lost communities and also creating this army of lost moms supporting other lost moms. So that's actually a very beautiful thing. Let's make
Yes,
it
I love
grow.
that. An army of lost mums. Yeah.
Let's keep it growing.
Yes. Yeah,
So
I'd love that.
yes, yes. So, Sharna, thank you again for coming to the show and truly appreciate the work that you do and for inspiring other lost moms to help others, find love again and self-acceptance, like you said, and self-forgiveness. So that's a beautiful work that you do. So thank you again.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to the Woman Collective podcast. I truly hope that you found this conversation meaningful and valuable. If you like what you heard today and if you would like to hear more, please go ahead and click the subscribe button below.